Hello, my name is Ike, and I'm a satisfied customer of Mile High Coatings, and I volunteered to do an unpaid testimonial for them. So let's get the basics out of the way. The paint quality was excellent. The crew was on time every day. They respected my property. The pace was very fast. The crew would listen and execute on my request. All those things they did great. And while admirable, nobody gets points for that, because if you're holding yourself out as a professional painter, these are things I would expect. But Mile High does get an A+ on getting the basics right. With the basics aside now, I'd like to talk about the value-added benefits of working with Mile High Coatings. And for me, I will classify those into three categories: the rendering, detail I didn't know, and don't do me any favors. The renderings. My home is a traditional Tudor. We had already decided on a trendy dark green background with a light color trim. We asked for a rendering for the traditional background with a dark brown trim and creamy background, simply because Mile High Coatings committed to it. They said that they would do 2 or 3 of them, and even though we knew what we wanted, we had him do a traditional rendering. The renderings of that traditional Tudor color were so striking, and the way that David laid them out was dramatic and really not anticipated. We didn't know how it would look, and those renderings were extremely valuable. We immediately changed our to the traditional palette. The trendier version would have looked fine. In fact, it would have looked great. But the traditional look was an easy choice, with the renderings, giving us everything we needed to make that decision. Don't dismiss the value of this. I'm really computer savvy, and I've tried all sorts of versions of paint rendering software, and I've never been very successful at it. And Mile High Coatings was able to whip them out, and they were accurate. And if I could have done it on my own, I would have, but I couldn't. So now that the painting is complete, I want to tell you the value I get out of it. The house looks about 60 years older than it really is, and I mean that in a good way. It looks like a Tudor built in the 1920s, really, really nice. It also looks much larger. On the some of the other benefits, I'll show you what I mean. And it really does have more of an old style, old money kind of feel to it. Almost all of my neighbors have complimented me on the job, and two have stated that they feel like the whole neighborhood's home values have gone up. So my house is on the entry corner, so first impression anyone gets is my house when they drive in, so that makes sense. So let's go out and look at a picture for the other two. This benefit is titled Detail I Didn't Know I Have. You can't see the detail in here, but I have 5 of these gables. Each gable has a small but very important detail. When I bought the house, this detail was not evident, as it had been painted the trim color. You can imagine how much effort Mile High took to mask all 5 of these, and how easy it would have been to just paint over the detail. And because I'd never noticed the detail before, I would have never known if they'd taken a shortcut. It's important to note that this small piece of trim turned out to be a big deal. This is back to the effect that this makes this house look bigger and taller. This piece of trim is very visible when you're just looking at the house. It's not visible in a way that says, ooh, look at that trim, but it's visible in a way as this house is really tall, and that piece of trim adds to that effect. The third value for me was don't do me any favors. I had asked for the soffits be painted in the light background color. The soffits are those downward-facing pieces of wood that match up to the wall or that piece of trim that we talked about earlier. And I had asked those to be painted the light background color. Mile High pushed back, and after they painted a test section where the soffits matched the rest of the trim, it immediately became aware that they had done hundreds of these, and they knew what looked right, and they weren't going to let me make a mistake. And my view of this is I pay good money, and just because I ask for something, don't do it if I'm making a mistake. Mile High wasn't afraid to appropriately push back on decisions if they knew I wouldn't like it. Painting a home is a really big deal, and getting it right for the first time was tremendously important to us, as we have never painted a room one time. We've always made mistakes and had to repaint. Mile High coatings really helped us through that process, and throughout the whole thing I was very comfortable making decisions that I wouldn't have to paint over. These are just 3 examples, categories of value-added benefits, and I have a lot of other examples. For me, using Mile High coatings helped me avoid regret and disappointment. Paint can be a cruel mistress.